There was a civilization here in Costa Rica. They made these stone spears. They're perfectly round. How did they do it? No one really knows. I want to honor the people that used to live here, that made it. They were very intelligent, scientific. They had enough science to be able to make perfect spears out of stone. And there's the proof right there. So I want to pray about it and send them love too to our ancestors. And I'm going to put some cedar for them, for the ancestors, and also bless this spear there. Peyote was designed for all human beings. It's the plant that opens your heart. It's the plant that opens your eyes, your ears, your mind, your heart. It makes you more aware of yourself, and it has healing abilities. So why would you want to limit the range that this plant has in order to affect the positive transformation of humanity? It's something that's so prevalent now in the society. Unfortunately, it's very sad to even talk about it, but somehow this story came to mind. It was about a woman who had been abused when she was a child by her family members. And we were in New York, and you know, the ceremonies are very popular, so they get filled up like rather quickly, you know. And this woman came kind of late into the ceremony, and there was hardly anywhere to sit. And usually when you come to a peyote ceremony, you try to come dressed up, you know, you want to look presentable for the community and for the spirits, you know. And she came, she was dressed kind of very casually, you know, and so when she opened the door, you know, people looked at her, and they already had like this attitude towards her. And then, so hardly anybody would move to try to accommodate her. So she kind of sat like by herself in a circle of her own, you know. And I noticed her, and I was like, okay, everyone's welcome. We started serving the medicine, and I know she was going through a process, you know, like the medicine was creating. Lots of times you have memories when you're in the ceremony. And lots of times the memories are the most difficult moments of your life come forward, because this energy is being stored in your abdominal region and your abdomen, I should say. And lots of times you start feeling this, and it's almost like a pain. And I saw that she was like excruciating. She was like, oh, so much that she started like kind of going to the ground and like moving like this. And the people were annoyed because she was disturbing the ceremony. And then I asked my friend, because I was running the ceremony, I said, ask her what's wrong, you know? So he went over there, and he came back and told me, he said she apparently is remembering when she was abused by her family members. And then it got to the point where she was like becoming very loud, and people were like, why don't you do something about it? But at the time I was singing the songs that are designed to make you feel something, you know, the words are like making you confront this experience. So when I finished singing, I took my feathers and I put her by the fire, and I asked the fire, the energy of the fire and the water, I put a cup of water there. I said, please help her to remove this energy. And I started helping her with the feathers, the wind, all these elements. She's laying on the earth. So what we have the wind with the feathers, which she's laying on the earth. There's a glass of water right near her, and the fire is right there. And then the fire made like a large pop. Everybody saw it, like it exploded, like it just went, like this, which the fire does sometimes, but it was interesting that it was happening at this time. And then she had like a big sigh of relief, and I gave her the water and, put some cedar and fanned her off with the feathers more, and then she became more tranquil. She sat there. After the ceremony, I talked to her, and she goes that she felt she had a release of all this childhood trauma. The next time I saw her, she was dressed very smart, very dapper, hair combed, looking very businesslike. She had become the director of the abuse center. Yeah, because she was educated, she was just having struggles with her childhood trauma. So apparently she had been associated with this center that was helping women that were abused. And somehow she became the director. So I want you to use your thoughts, your mind to put some love into this medicine. And we're going to all share today. Thank you, Tomás Kauyumari, Purito, Canarito Azul, Águila de Luz, Espíritu Divino. Wirarica community, which some people call Huichol, they have a definite understanding of this region between the navel and the pelvic bone, the pubic bone. They call it the Nyerica, which is physically associated with this small intestines, this spiraling. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's a spiral. So in most organisms, the digestive system is the most ancient part of the whole system, because first it has to digest in order to create nutrients and sustenance for the rest of the organism. So in humans, it's the same. This part is your most ancient part. It's the part that develops in the embryo first, because it has to be able to transform the nutrients so that the rest of the body can develop. So likewise, when you are experiencing things, the first place that you begin to connect to the energetic experience of life is through this area. So here's where it's stored, the energy of both good and not so good experiences. So if you've had, things that happen in your life, this is where you're going to store it, and this is where you're going to release it. So sometimes when you purge, where you vomit, you throw it all up, this is the physical release of all of this trauma. There's also a way to do it energetically. And this is why we put people in front of the fire like this, because with the breath, you can also release this type of energy. Like some people say, do I have to purge if I eat peyote? Many people do not purge because they're able to move the energy and release it through their direct energetic connection with the fire, with the earth. So some people need to throw up, okay, which is also a good thing, because then there's also physical toxins that can create things like cancer, tuberculosis, different malfunctions of the cells, because it's actually a physical poison that you're having inside of your gut. Let's talk about positivity. And I like to say impeccable positivity, like always be positive. Why? Because there's a way to overcome the negative reality that exists. And the way you overcome it is with the positive outlook, the positive attitude. The indigenous people of North America were devastated by the superior machinery to kill people that the government employed in order to murder the native people who were many times defenseless. You know, women, children were murdered in an effort to just completely wipe out the native people. After all of this experience of being murdered and disposed of your ancient homelands and then corralled in these concentration camps, and then having the children removed and placed in Catholic schools, and their hair cut and their language, you know, their clothes changed, complete genocide. How were they able to come back from all of this? Well, one of the important things that they did was that they started ceremonies with peyote. How would you call it? I want to say pride, but it's more than pride. It's like the strength, the strength and self-respect to continue their cultural ways. And this is what happened. In the end of the 18th century, Native nations were using these ceremonies to get rid of alcoholism, to remember the culture and honor the elders, and they were able to retain a large part of their language. Then the other ceremonies began resurfacing again. The sweat lodge, the vision quest, the sun dance, the moon dance, the spirit dances, the powwows. They would work with the animals and keep them in a natural state. All of this began coming back. And that's what we see today, that the Native communities, even though they're still some of the poorest regions in the planet, some of the reservations still have some of the worst social conditions in terms of suicide rates, alcoholism. There are positive aspects of the Native communities, which is the spiritual aspects and the ceremonial aspects. But it's a constant struggle to fight against this negativity that you're talking about. I mean, Native people don't produce alcohol, but yet there's a lot of liquor stores in the Native community. Where do they come from? You know, they don't create these TV programs or that show violence and all these things, but yet they have TV sets and they're watching it. So all of this mental and physical negativity is present. And the best we can do is try to teach our community, the youth, focus on the youth, and try to get them to come into the ceremonies, to do the rites of passage, and to continue with the culture. And some of them have even allowed the youth to use, for example, guitars. This is an example. So the youth wanted to play guitars, and the elders wanted them to learn their traditional songs. So what do? Like, the elders are saying, no, those guitars, they're from another culture, but they were incorporated into the ceremony, and now people are singing native songs all over the world. Why? Because they're playing them with guitars. So you see, this is one way to be positive about something that you could say is negative. Instead of using the guitars for rock and roll and maybe a drug culture or something like this, which the youth would then be jeopardizing their health, and they're using them in the ceremonies. So this is one example of how you can take a positive attitude towards negative things and turn it around and use it to your advantage. There's a book called Sweet Medicine that has 4 volumes, and this person went around back in the 1800s and wrote accounts of some of the things that the native people had experienced. And one of them come to mind where they took out the chanupa pipe and they sat between the native people and the cavalry. And they sat like that and they prayed with their pipe. They sat in the four directions. And the cavalry was trying to shoot them from the distance. And the bullets did not reach them. Now, some people might say, oh, this is just a story or a tale. But somehow somebody witnessed it, and I'm relating it to you, that they were able to use the power of this prayer, of this attitude that we are protected by the Great Spirit. And then they went back, and then they eliminated the cavalry in that battle. Unfortunately, the United States, being what they are, started to develop repeating rifles that allowed them to shoot faster than what the native people could avoid. And this is why they began to lose the war, because the native people were not developing war technology, whereas the United States were all about war technology. And then they killed all the buffaloes, so they eliminated the food source. So, and then they spread diseases. So in front of all this onslaught, the balance became too much. But what we're seeing today is part of a prophecy that the ancients also shared with us. They said, look, 500 years are going to go by, and there's going to be like this big wave, like a big tsunami of diseases, war, all this destruction of the land and everything. But after about 500 years, these plants are going to resurface. The culture is going to resurface. All of these people are going to come out, and they're going to share the medicines. This is what we're seeing. The world is being blessed by the plants, by the native culture, by this perspective of living positively. And I'm a very positive person, and I see the tides are turning. I see that, corporate executives, politicians, wealthy people, just the common people have found a renewed interest in personal development and also taking care of the ecology, taking care of the ecosystem of the planet. So now there's an awareness. Whereas before people would just mine wherever and leave tailings or drill for oil wherever, it's still going on. I'm sure somebody's probably going to say, well, there was just an oil spill over here. It's still going on. But now there's actually an awareness about stopping this, whereas before there wasn't as strong of awareness to do the right thing for the earth and for the people. I was in Greece, and we were having a ceremony, and I was telling the people to give thanks to the fire, and this guy told me that where his father lived, there was a fire raging in the countryside, and all the houses were being burned. So I told him, well, pray to the fire anyway. Try to be positive. When he went home, his father's house was in a green island. And it had such an impact on him that he became a person who is now serving peyote and conducting ceremonies. Because this simple fact that I told him, pray to the fire and ask him to protect your dad. And when he went home to the countryside was all black and charred except for his father's house. So like this, the power, of course, you can call it quantum physics or you can call it things, but personally I have witnessed it. So this is why I share these stories, because And people that know me know these stories are factual, you know. Maybe the observer is saying maybe I made them up, but you know, people that know the truth, as you're saying, the truth of the events will substantiate it.
Yeah, this experience of so-called quote unquote miracles starts popping up on the radar of people who've had peyote. Why is it that we start spotting miracles, or is it more that we are waking up from a sleep in order to recognize what's actually happened?
You know, here in Costa Rica, there was a civilization that lived here prior to the Spanish invasion. And much of what existed in Costa Rica was erased from the minds of the people. There's a few native communities, indigenous communities that still exist, but a lot of their history and a lot of their culture has been forgotten, you know, and or let's say there's been the people aren't interested anymore. So I look for things in the ancient culture that would stir an interest in these communities. And one of the things I found here in Costa Rica are these spheres that they made out of stone that are in perfect dimension. They're perfect spheres, and they're different sizes. Some of them are as big as humans, some of them are smaller, and they weigh, they're like very heavy, like one person could not pick them up. Maybe even 4 or 5 people could not. And some of them, like, they're, you know, it's almost hard to conceive how they, first of all, made them in their perfect construction. And then second of all, how did they move them? And these are people here in Costa Rica, and people say, no, the civilization here was, you know, hunter-gatherers or something. You know, they minimize the level of civilization that existed here. Even though there's like art, jade, stone, carvings, a lot that remained. A lot of the hard artifacts, you know, made out of stone and so we put one of those spheres at our ceremony the other night here in Costa Rica. It was on the property, and we brought it into the circle of the ceremony. And the energy generated by that made some very profound energies available, especially for the fact that there was a full moon and there was the Venus was in the sky, and we were praying about love. And there was a Mazatec woman from the mushroom tradition who was speaking her ancient language, evoking the spirit of the ancients, evoking the spirit. So this created a portal. And the people that were present, whether they realized it or not, were benefiting from this aperture.
They all disappeared into the vortex.
It was like this, yeah. They're remnants of a civilization that was able to use technology that modern day technology has not been able to decipher. So this shows that there is a mysterious part of human existence in the past. And the same goes for all these other ancient structures. You know, I'd love to talk about them, but when you're there, you realize that there's a power, a physical power, a mental power, an intellectual capacity, a connection with some energetic source and some design in the humans that we are not using. Because the stone structures are there. Whether it's in Peru, where you see, you know, these huge, massive stones that have been transported and then fashioned to where you can't even fit a butter knife in there. Like whole walls of these enormous stones of odd shape. How did they do it, you know? And you're there and you're looking at it and you're touching it, but yet the mind cannot figure it out. You know, it's a mystery still.
How do you explain?
I explained that they used the energy of the sun, they used the energy of vibration, sound, and they had a profound understanding of molecular composition. And they were able to split the molecules. Somehow they had a way of using a mental configuration and then transposing it onto a physical object, using either the electromagnetic force of the earth combined with sound vibration, and it's probably a combination of heating with solar energy, sound vibration, and then the mind projecting the image through some instrument, which it could have either just been kinetic energy, or it could have been some tools that they fashioned out of crystals and other objects that enhance the energy.
Now that the modern Western science only discovered quantum physical reality in the 1920s, it's 100 years old, that we know that the physical aspect, matter, is really just energy, that it's our way of perceiving it as matter, because we have very narrow band of perception, and ultimately that the reality is waveform, complex vibration, and electromagnetic forms. How well was this understanding embedded in the native cultures and traditions?
Well, let's take the plants, since we're talking about plant medicines. They were able to perceive the energy that the plants contain. So they knew which plants were poisonous, they knew which ones were edible, and then they discovered which plants also had these powers to enhance the energetic reality of people. For example, ayahuasca is made of 2 plants. Now, how did the ancients know which plants to mix? Now the chemists say, well, one's an inhibitor, and then the other one has DMT, and they understand the chemical. How did the ancients do it if they didn't have a chemical lab? They were able to perceive energy. See, this is the capacity that humans have, which has been ignored. And now it's being reintroduced as a science through instrumentation, measuring the vibration, measuring the aura, measuring the field, measuring the things that now physics is using. But the native people were living this. This is why they had an abundance of food. Things are available for humans to understand, to learn. Like they call it the book of the night sky, the book of the ocean, the book of nature. If you want to call it a book, that helps you understand that they contain information that's useful for human activity. So they studied it in their own way. Because here they make you go to school. Okay, we had schools, but they weren't like the schools that we have today. They were schools that were based on interacting with the reality. Whereas you go to a public school, you're taken out of a reality, and they're trying to put a reality into your mind. They want you to create a reality in your mind. Whereas the native people would take the children and take them into the reality. This reality you're talking about. True reality. And this is where the learning was taking place. And then if they needed to put it in a book or put it in a carving, a stone, then they would take that realization and then make a beautiful piece of art that represented the information that they had received. For example, what they call the Aztec stone of the sun. It's a massive piece of stone that was carved. They discovered that the earth goes around the sun in 365 and 1/4 day. So they designed the stone to compensate for that quarter day by starting the year at a different time of the day each year. So the first year, the days would start at sunrise. The next year, the days would start at noon. The third year, the days would start at sunset. And the fourth, they would start at midnight. So by the time you got to the fifth year, you had already compensated for that quarter day. And they honored the different directions at the same time. So they studied the movement of the planets. They studied, and they realized that every 52 years, there was an alignment. So then they designed their calendar, their concept of time, the passage of time, based on the actual movement of the planets, the sun, the earth, and the moon. It wasn't arbitrary. And this was why they understood that the earth is an orb and that it's going around the sun. Unlike the European concept of time, which put the earth as a flat surface with the sun going around the earth. See, that's a big difference. How did they come to this conclusion? By actually studying the reality. So all of this information exists. Plants, they have so many properties. The plants all have either some type of property, and they were able to perceive through the vibration, through the light of the plants. This is the way they explained it to me. I'm just transmitting some information because I call myself a person who shares. And most of the things I share, I try to remember what the elders told me. And also the direct experience, the things I have witnessed. But the way they explained it to me is that the power plants have like a blue hue to them. The mushrooms, the peyote, the ayahuasca have like a blue, this kind of incandescent blue light to them. So this is how they perceive the power plants. And blue represents truth in our culture. Blue, when they show somebody speaking blue, it represents like the sky, the ocean, nature, the water, the wind. He's speaking of nature. So this is part of the, I say positive, which I think if we really analyze the word positive, I think in the way we're using it, it could also be considered like an electric node. But more than that, I think it's lining up with the energetic field of the creation. And this is the positive I'm talking about. There is no such thing as afterlife or before life. There is only life. The concept of death is a concept of, it's a mechanism to strike fear into the hearts of people since they were born. Like when you die, this is the first thing they tell you, So in our culture, we don't have this when you die. When you transition, when you transmute, when you change into another form. See, and this is the teaching with Peyote. Peyote is a spirit that can transform into other phenomena. He can be a plant, he could be a deer, he can be an eagle, he could be part of the fire, he can be part of the water, Peyote is a spirit. The fire is a spirit. Okay, some people say grandfather, is it grandfather fire and grandmother moon? And the elders say, no, it's the moon and it's the fire. You want to say grandfather, grandmother, okay, they're not going to correct you. But in their understanding, it can be both. Now, the importance of this is to understand that we can transform from one form into another form. And that each form has its specific field or energy at that moment. I had an interview with the Catholic students. They were interested in learning about how Native people perceive what happens when a person stops breathing. Let's say that. So I explained to them, some people, they wrap their, like, take the people that survived eating buffaloes. Their culture was when a person passed away, they would wrap them in a buffalo robe and set him on the earth where the buffalo grass grew, so that his body would turn into buffalo grass. And then the buffaloes would come and eat the grass, and then his grandchildren would eat the buffalo. So this is kind of a picturesque way of understanding our belief of what happens to a person. You transform into parts of your being, your physical part transforms into other physical parts. Your energetic part of you transforms into some other form of energy. And I'll tell you an interesting story about the native people invented the ball, the rubber ball, out of a plant called ule, guayule in our language. It's a little bush that has these little, and then they boiled them and made it into rubber. And they made a ball and they made a game out of ball games. It's similar to soccer. It's like a combination of soccer and basketball, except you can't use your hands or your feet. And they use their torso and their thighs and to send the ball back and forth between the two teams. And it's a sacred game. And it was played throughout the whole continent. And at some point each year, they had I guess you would call it a competition, where they would play against each other until the whole continent had this game, the northern part of the continent. When the final game was played between the two best teams, the captain of the winning team asked to be transported into the next existence. And he asked the captain of the other team to do him the honors. So the captain of the team that lost would help the person to go into the next existence, because he was reached the apex of what he always played this game. His life was to dream to be the captain of the team that was the continental victor, and at that point he asked to be transported. And some people misconfused this and said that the ones that lost were sacrificed, and this is not true. It's the opposite. The person who was in his ultimate glory, the highest point that he had reached in his life, is when he asked to be transported. And by the way, I also should mention that in our history, we don't have this lie about people's hearts being cut out for sacrificing to gods and all of this stuff. This is not true. This was fabricated by the Spanish. And there's a book by Arturo Mesa Gutierrez that he did the actual research when the Spanish started creating these lies The first one was when people were being buried in these large urns made out of clay. And they saw a human body in the urn when they came upon this burial, and they thought that they were going to cook him. So this is where the first misconception that Native people were cannibals, because they saw them burying a person in a big ceramic bowl, and they thought they were going to, and it was a burial. And then the other lies were fabricated simply to justify the destruction of the Native people. The missionaries created these lies that our culture would kill human beings as some sort of sacrifice to some gods. This is just pure lies.
But that's a pretty significant example of how there was a fundamental belief that you took that energy with you in that transition.
Yeah. No, it's the same you were talking about battle. When you go into battle, you know that there's a definite possibility that you're going to be wounded, or you're going to stop breathing because your physical body is going to be either a bullet or something's going to. So yeah, but your spirit is going to return. You see, we believe in cyclical existence. And this is the word ko. The first concept of existence is a spiral. Because you see, the galaxy is spiraling, the earth is spiraling, the moon is spiraling. You can see it going around in a circle, but actually the circle is moving through space. So what happens when you move a circle through space? It creates a spiral. But from your perspective here, it's just going around. See, so the earth is spiraling, the moon is spiraling, the sun, the galaxy, the whole universe is in a spiral. So this is the first understanding. Existence is a spiral.
Even the DNA is a spiral.
The DNA is a spiral. The serpents are spiraling. Everything's spiraling. So if everything is spiraling, then we must be in a spiral. So this is how they understood what happens when you leave this physical existence as what we call the individual human experience.
And you want to spiral up rather than down.
You want to, this is what we would call positive spiraling. For the rivers, for the waterfalls, the oceans, the ice, the snow, and the caps, the polar caps. Praying for the morning dew, and praying for the tears that we cry, praying for all water and all the forms that exist, the water that runs in our blood, all the water, and then all the animals and the plants that depend on this water. So the Abuelita says we need to stop polluting the water, stop polluting the earth. We keep the water clean for the future generations. I want to pray a prayer for all the babies that are going to be born, the new life that's coming into this world. I'm going to pray for my grandson that's going to be born next month, May, a couple of months, and then my great-grandson's going to be born in July. Pray for the new life.
Western culture is built on the assumption that you get older, you get weaker, and then your time terminates and you are a dead person.
Yeah.
So it defines the entire existence.
Yeah.
How you plan your life.
Yeah.
You plan for security and comfort and accumulation of assets around you, and you put a fence around you, etc. This mindset defines the entire culture.
Yeah.
Okay, so Peyote as an energetic plant has a very central role in all of this, in human evolution potential. Tell me about who should take this plant.
Peyote was designed for all human beings, and everyone should take peyote. without exception, because peyote is beneficial for your physical existence and your mental, emotional state. And everyone can benefit from this opening of the heart and this increase of perception, how to view their reality in a loving and positive light. So this should be made accessible for everyone on the planet. And I will speak directly to this effort to limit the number of people who should consume and use peyote in their worship, in their daily practice of living. And this is because my elders were the ones who told me this, that peyote should be for everyone. And they instructed me to make peyote available for everyone on the planet. And I am following their guidance. Even though there's governments and there's certain organizations and certain individuals that have spoken against this based on their own personal opinions. And I want to just state for the record that I am a Native person and I believe that peyote is for everyone. And this is not considered cultural appropriation, is considered cultural appreciation. When one person from another culture can appreciate the benefits that another culture has to offer and partakes of this culture with respect, with love in their heart, and with an open mind and an open heart in order to receive the benefits that that particular culture has to offer to the world. It's like yoga. So many people do yoga and breathing, you know. It comes from another culture, but everybody's doing it. Or certain arts, you know, or using certain instruments, as I explained. So now we come into what we call the ceremony level of existence for humanity, where all the people who have developed ceremonies that are beneficial for humans have the opportunity to share them with other people. And peyote is one of the greatest gifts that Native people can offer to the world. And it should not be, people should, okay, there's the issue about the amount of peyote that exists on the planet. And this they're using as an excuse to try to stop people from eating peyote. And this is what you would call a negative response to a negative situation. Now, if we look at a positive response to this negative situation, we would say, let's make peyote accessible for cultivation, because it's a plant. It's a medicinal plant. Now, people will also say, no, that this is contrary to their belief about how peyote should exist on the planet. But this belief was based on times where there was not massive destruction of the natural habitat of this plant. So just like you were saying, if people believe they're going to live in peace and then the army comes and kills all the people, where the people were able to flee from their natural homeland. This is where their ancestors were buried. This is where their children were born. They're not supposed to leave that area, but they left that area in order to survive. They were smart enough, intelligent enough to use a positive response to a very critical situation and alter their belief that they should not leave the land where their ancestors existed in order to survive. So now we have another modern situation in 2024 where peyote is being destroyed by industrialization. So what is the response? To limit the amount of people that can eat peyote? This is not an adequate response, because what if they start destroying all the peyotes? How did that response prove to be effective? It wasn't. So some people are getting the peyote and planting it, but only in certain areas. Why only in certain areas? When peyote can grow in the entire planet. And I know this. It's growing in Africa, it's growing in Australia, it's growing in Europe, it's growing in Thailand, it's growing all over the world. What we need to do is dispel the negative information about peyote so that people are not afraid of it. People are afraid of it because they think it's a drug. It's a plant that's growing naturally on earth, and it has, as I said, probably the plant that produces more stem cells. It's the plant that opens your heart. It's the plant that opens your eyes, your ears, your mind, your heart. It makes you more aware of yourself, and it has healing abilities. So why would you want to limit the range that this plant has in order to affect the positive transformation of humanity? So I'm saying for the record that I was instructed to take this beautiful plant peyote, this beautiful spirit, and share it with everyone, irregardless of their color, irregardless of their nationality, irregardless of the language they speak. As long as they're human, they have the right to grow peyote, to ingest it and pray with it and use it for their healing and their spiritual enhancement. Because for us, spirituality really is reality. Native people, spirituality is not some thing in the pure ethereal or something that is in another, like, place. It's here. Spirituality is here. It's rooted in the Mother Earth. It's rooted in the sun. It's rooted in the ocean. It's part of everything that exists. This is spirituality for us. So peyote is real. It's a plant, it's alive, it's growing, and it connects us with everything else that is real. And it allows us to help bring about the transformation that we want to see in the world. Love, peace, harmony, take care of Mother Earth, take care of the water, take care of the air, take care of the children, take care of the elders, take care of the people, stop killing them, help them. There's enough to go around. The earth has enough for the entire population. We don't need to eliminate populations. We don't need to go to other planets to live. Let's take care of Mother Earth. Let's use the plants to create a new type of human being, a new mentality where the most important thing is not accumulation of material goods. And the most important thing is not to think about what happens after you die. Where the most important thing is to be present and to live as part of earth. In our language we say tlali for earth. Humans are tlakame. Humans are part of the earth in our language. So like this, peyote is good for everyone. And I hope that the people who have this idea of trying to stop peyote from spreading across the planet will realize that they are obstructing the purpose of peyote. The purpose of peyote is to help entire humanity to evolve. here. Forgive. Let it all go. Like that. The light goes on.